Hello, everybody. I might be a bit quiet, so just let me know. But I'll move my microphone a little bit closer. But as you can probably tell, um, that I'm a bit sick, and so my voice is like not exactly doing all that great. But I can already see that Joan Yellow Arc is here. Sir Zhao Zhao Shahar are all around. I see Hell Fox. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the stream. So, hello, Corentin. Um, to give you guys a little bit of an update, if this is anybody's first time in the stream, this is a weekly 1 hour stream I do before a Step Back video goes live. As we all know, Step Back videos go live at 2 p.m. every weekday. And so I do this video every bit before I go. I do like an hour where I talk to you guys and we ask questions, we learn, we love, and we grow as people. I'll try to keep my energy up. As I said, I am very sick. I've had this cold almost for a whole week, and I've like not been able to move for like several days. So it's been a real ride. It's also a super overcast, shitty day where it's going to possibly have thunderstorms tonight. So, stuff. Anyways, as for some housekeeping, this weekend is Subscriber Appreciation Day with Mike Stutchbury. That'll be really exciting. Mike Stutchbury is a really cool history-learned Twitter personality that I'm really excited to talk to you about because he did an epic historian takedown of Paul Joseph Watson that you guys might remember from several months ago. But also, I don't know. Well, we'll have a really good time. It'll be really fun. As you can see, everybody is having a ball. So, what should we talk about today? What's been going on? I've been just a little bit tad checked out on the news because of my whole being in bed drinking NyQuil existence in the last week. So, and also another thing I'm doing is I'm going through a massive revamp of my the way that my videos are made. And so I have been making this is the video that will come out next week. And I've been doing a lot of changes, and that'll be really fun to see how that goes down. I actually just finished the entire video, put it in the media encoder, uploaded it to YouTube, put all the metadata into the thing, and realized that for some reason the video was like just a tiny bit shifted this way. And so there's this black bar on one side, and so now I got to go and fix it. Yeah. Doughboy DeVito, you just finished your final. Good work, good work. As a Canadian, who would you consider to be your greatest prime minister? Yikes, that's a tough call. To be fair, I don't think that I've super liked any Canadian prime ministers. I can't think of any that stick out as really great. I guess Pierre Elliott Trudeau comes to mind because Pierre Elliott Trudeau was pretty good at breaking Canada off from the UK and kind of setting ourselves up a sort of destiny. But he also put an entire province of Canada on martial law to stop and arrested Quebec nationalists. So I don't really know. Canadian prime ministers, I think, play less of a leadership role than American presidents, for example. And so I think that Canada, for the large part, doesn't really have these like bold initiatives. Like Justin Trudeau and Pierre Elliott Trudeau stick out the most as like leaders who had their own distinct personalities and their own set of agendas that they put across. While like maybe Jean Chrétien is the only other person who comes close. But like even then, I'm not saying I even agree with them. I'm just saying that they had a force of personality. That's about it. Or John A. MacDonald. John A. MacDonald was fun because he was such a heavy drinker that he like literally threw up in Parliament once. And when the Liberals were saying like something, and then the Conservatives, because he was a conservative, he threw up because he was such a hard drinker. And then he said, someone said something about him being an alcoholic, and he was just like, you know, I didn't throw up because of drink. I threw up because of like how terrible your rhetoric is, or something like that. And I mean, that's kind of fun, but also he was probably a racist shithead. So, you know, what are you gonna do? Hello, Ace. Also, and I know that I have some viewers on my channel who actually like despise me for doing this, but I am way more knowledgeable about American history than Canadian history because of like my areas of expertise. And so, you know, Mackenzie King, I honestly like Canada in World War II was kind of, you know, we were there, we did some stuff, nothing really impressive. We were good, loyal Imperial boys who, you know, leapt at the call, and we technically said we went to war one day after the United Kingdom, but basically we just, you know, leapt at the chance to help our imperial overseers. But we were, you know, we committed just as many atrocities as any other belligerent of World War II. All right. So instead of D&D, you had a real life sword fight, and then made some strategies for next week. Fun. That sounds like a good time. Do you like hard bass? I don't exactly. I know that sounds like a genre of music, but I'm not exactly sure what that is. If you can send me, you're gonna get spam filtered for putting links in the chat. But if you like tweet me at Tristan PJ some hard bass songs, I'll listen to them. I am always look interested in listening to new music all the time. Best governor general. Trust me, governor generals are even less important than prime ministers. Do middle-class children of immigrants have generational wealth, even though their parents used to be incredibly poor before immigrating to the U.S.? Yes. So it's a generational thing. It's more about the time period that their parents had their professional lives in. If they immigrated to the United States and became very rich, because the United States had multiple decades of unstopping economic growth and prosperity, then they would probably end up getting a generational wealth. And honestly, if they've immigrated any time recently, they have to be relatively wealthy in their country in order to immigrate anyway. I don't know where the girl who has been noticed. I guess she's probably busy. It's exam time for the university students, or it's summertime, which means that she's either getting ready for exams or trying to find a summer job. I'm sure she has better things to do than to hang out with me. She'll come around. She's pretty cool. Massimiliano Tron wants to know, a righty friend told me that Che Guevara and Castro created homosexual concentration camps. Ever heard that one? No, I have never heard of that one, but it would surprise me not at all to know that, for example, if Che Guevara was super homophobic, because there she is. Yay. Most historical figures were pretty terrible until like very recently. And so, you know, there's like, I don't think that like you're not gonna. I don't think that like concentration camp that like that would require a lot more research than I can do just off the cuff here. But to know that, like, you know, tanky communist regimes, anti-colonial movements would be homophobic would not surprise me at all. Why hasn't So That Happening been on? I've been staying up all of Sunday. Well, Ace, all right. So here's the thing about So That Happened. It's still kind of going, but we have to manage 3 people's schedules, specifically Cody's. And Cody is difficult. Sometimes has a difficult schedule to work around because Cody's always working on things, or he's got like a very busy social life, and sometimes he forgets that the show is happening. So oftentimes on Sunday, I have to check with him to make sure the thing's happening. The last little bit, though, he's been missing because he's working on a book, and he's had some pretty tight deadlines. And if there's one thing, the best and worst thing about Cody is that he sets himself these deadlines that are insane, and then does like a huge amount of work in a very short amount of time. Like he pulls, like when we did our collaboration together, Cody pulled like several all-nighters in a row. So this is the video that we did about net neutrality. When he was working on the animations for that video, he pulled several all-nighters in a row to get that video done. And just so that he could get the thing. But now that he's got like a book publisher and like a real deadline that has like consequences, he has been like going freaking crazy trying to get this book written that he promised to do. And so he's been like, you know, gotta get hand in like 1 billion pages for Monday. Sorry. And so he can't do the show. But he doesn't really know if he's going to make it until, oh, hell, hey, look, it's Phoebe. Hey, everybody, look, we got Phoebes here. Hey, girl. So, you know, that happens. And then last weekend, I think it was my fault. Last Sunday was me missing because of me being sick. Like this horrible messed up voice that I have, where I sound like a 12-year-old boy. This is me at the end of this cold. So this cold I had for like a week had me in super terrible shape for most of the week. Say hi, Phoebes. No, this cat never meows. She's great. I'll get to the book question in a second. So which voting system would you like to see implemented in Canada? The ones that are in like political reality. So the last election in 2015, we had we had 3 political parties running, and all 3 of them had a different voting system that they wanted. The Conservatives, if the Conservatives wanted to maintain the Conservatives wanted to keep the first past the post system because the Conservatives last election won a majority government with 39% of the popular vote. So they wanted to make sure that they kept that going. The Liberals promised a alternative vote system, which is where you rank your ballot. But then they immediately gave up on that. It was like one of the first big campaign promises. They decided to say, ha, psych, fuck you guys, which basically made me not want to vote for the Liberals ever again. That was their platform. And the NDP, which is our like social democrat party, ran on a platform of popular proportional representation. And I think that's probably the one I would want to go for. Proportional representation would be great. Out of the ones that are like of dominant political political viability, I'd probably say that that's the one that I like the most. If I had to go to other systems, I'd be more into like, you know, decentralized direct democracy or something like that. But that's a bit too egalitarian for most people. Oh yeah. So you have 8 parties in parliament. We have like 5 parties in parliament, I think, at least. Yeah, we have 5, but only 3 of them have like a viable chance of winning an election, and only 2 ever actually have formed government. I mean, but we have like we have a Green Party that has like 2 seats, and we have a Bloc Québécois has like 3 seats or 10 seats now, which are Quebec separatist parties. So like, yeah, that's about it though. What if Newfoundland remained a separate Dominion / Commonwealth state? Newfoundland would be super duper poor. Like really, really, really poor. Because the thing about Newfoundland is that not too long after Newfoundland joined Canada, it the cod fisheries that they relied on they dried up, and the Newfoundlanders needed to find a new economic model, and they really struggled to find one. And so Newfoundland's been in pretty rough shape, and a lot of young Newfoundlanders leave because of that. At the moment, there's like not a lot going on there, except for like offshore oil. Oh yeah, for anyone new, this is Phoebe. Phoebe. I got this cat. This was my wife's cat, and I got her when we moved in together, and she's so great because I got to know her before we moved in together. Oh man, she's adorbs. Have you heard of Jan Smuts, the African Prime Minister from 1919 to 1924 and 1939? I've heard the name. I don't really know details about him. I know that he had some isn't that the guy who had like these really weird contingency plans about how to defend white people in South Africa against like a black uprising? I'm not exactly sure. So what's the book about? All right, so Cody's book, I can't say too much because he doesn't want any spoilers, but you can just imagine it has to do with alternate history. What do you think about Putin arresting and executing anarchists? I mean, he's an authoritarian conservative dictator. Like, are you surprised by this? I really don't understand why there's so many people on the left who support this hyper right-wing oligarch dictator so much. Putin's not good. He's not a good person. His policies are not good. They're anti-American, which that's like half the countries in the world, but they're not good. He suppresses so many, brutalizes LGBT people. He is actively interfering in the sovereignty of other nations, and he kills journalists and shit. I don't understand. I don't understand how anybody who considers themselves left wing could be such an apologist for Vladimir Putin. Can you please not call us Marxist-Leninist tankies? Some of us find it offensive. Well, then you shouldn't have supported the state and authoritarian regimes and suppressing dissent and brutal collectivization plans and things like that. I mean, that's a little bit more Stalinist, but still, using the state to violently force people to become communist is not going to end well for nobody. Oh man. Okay. What is the conversation? I will. And yeah, if anybody hasn't heard, I am. My voice is wrecked because of a cold. How do you think that public school teachers should combat oppressive policies against children in their workplace? So, Joe DeVito, are you talking about how so many schools have really dumb rules about what women are allowed, what girls are allowed to wear, and permission slips to go to the bathroom and things like that? if I was a teacher, I would just try to make those rules slide as much as humanly possible. I know that you get in trouble, but I feel like a teacher getting in trouble is a completely different thing than like a person, like a student getting in trouble. I feel like I wouldn't be a teacher very long though in that case. But you know, do what you need to do to stay hired, but also if you can look the other way, if you can give yourself plausible deniability, then do it. Because rules suck and parents are authoritarian monsters. Alrighty. Now the question is, what is the new video? The new video is the last Know Your Fantasy for a while. It's a Know Your Fantasy video. It's about dwarves. And once this dwarves video comes out, I'm kind of like putting the series on ice for a while. So yeah. So dwarves in like, you know, mythology and folklore and stuff. It's the last one, I swear. I know that you guys didn't like it very much, but I had too many requests to do a video about dwarves. So there you go. Do you have any idea why the Bloc Québécois is imploding? Like, what went down? Yeah, the Bloc Québécois lost a shit ton of seats in 2015. They're facing the fact that a lot of millennials don't want to separate from Canada because they're rational and make sense, and they don't want to they don't want to get in trouble or something. I don't know. No, it's like, what's it called? They don't want to break off from Canada because they have logical and reasonable like desires for their future, and they know that doing Quebec or like Quebec separating from Canada would be a disaster, and so they're not doing it. So that's an issue, and also the Bloc Québécois, after it lost the 2015 election in a huge. At the 2011 election, they got reduced to 3 seats, and they've had a lot of trouble. They've had a lot of trouble trying to get themselves back to relevance. And really, without Quebecois people being mad at Canada about something, they haven't really had anything to go on. And so really, what's a bigger deal is more that the Bloc Québécois came out of a particularly angry moment for the Quebec people in the 90s. And as that becomes an older and older thing that people forget, the Bloc Québécois is becoming less and less relevant. And I doubt that they have a long-term future. And also, they're having a really bad moment where they just broke off. They just had a new leader. They just had a new leader who, like, half of the party hates, and like 7 of the 10 MPs like left the Bloc Québécois over it, and so now they're all independent. So it's all sorts of crazy. What's the etymology weirdness behind liberal referring both to the social left and the economic right? Oh, well, Maximiliano, that's just American political talk. So liberal ideas, liberalism, the philosophy that goes all the way back to the Enlightenment, is about 2 things. It's about economic, like classical economic tyranny. So like a lot of the Enlightenment philosophers who were like the fathers of liberalism loved slavery. They loved imperialism. They loved, they completely justified the rich ruling over the poor. They thought all of these things were great, but they didn't like what they thought was the oppressive power over their personal liberty as rich white men. And so when they were pro-capitalism and pro-rights for themselves. Unfortunately, for liberals, their ideas were expressed in this universalist language. And other people who like the idea of equality and having a voice started to also want to get those things. They adopted liberal language, and liberalism had to expand its definition over the years in order to stay relevant. But like conservatives, like conservatism, like the word is usually somebody who just doesn't want things to change, or they want things to regress to a previous state. Those are the differences. Alrighty. Were you aware that the people of the Great War Channel will start World War II week by week starting in September of 2019? That doesn't surprise me. The channel is really popular and they're running out of war. So I thought that they were going to do something like this. It seems like the logical next choice. Everybody would like that. Honestly, with how World War II worked, I think it'll be more interesting than the World War I series. So, yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. Oh yeah, and also the liberalism thing that there's no viable socialist party in America, and so liberals have become de facto the left wing of American politics, and that also means that it's America, like de facto left wing politics, and that means that anybody in America who grew up and became who got into left wing politics. Then took the label liberal and identified themselves under that label. And so you even have, so in America, you would actually have people who say that socialists are very, very, very liberal. And that only makes sense in America. I guess, yeah, Deanna's right that the difference between a conservative and a reactionary is whether you want to set society to a previous state in time or whether you are just resistant to change. And this is actually a pretty good statement to make because a lot of like America's conservatives are reactionaries, and a lot of like our conservative party just doesn't want things to change. Well, they have reactionary views too, but like that's a good call because our political terminology is all over the map now. Notice how okay, girl who has now been noticed. How would you explain the difference between discrimination and sexism and fascism, or sexism and racism? I'm not sure that they're like discrimination is. It feels more legalistic. Official discrimination, things like Jim Crow, segregation, things like that, are like actual racially coded laws on the books to enforce racist policies or sexist policies. But that's not sexism and racism. Sexism and racism is a much bigger problem than just a few laws in the book. And that's like a thing that like the classical liberals and like the anti-ID poll left seem to have issues with because they don't understand that even though you make segregation illegal, it doesn't solve racism. That it is an ongoing decolonization of our minds. That's it all. Like sexism comes back to it's a longer one. It's a big one that goes all the way back to patriarchal divisions of labor that comes from a society that values physical strength over any other aspect of the human body, which comes from like farming days basically. Because before farming, we were a foraging society where we just foraged for things, or we occasionally got meat from hunting. But in that society, women and men did not have an appreciably different status in society. But once we started farming, when planting and hoeing and all that kind of stuff becomes a thing, then that's when you see patriarchies start to form. But racism is a product of colonization. It's a product of slavery. And in a lot of ways, they are different types of problems. They're different types of projects. Sexism is a way of is going to be a deeper and harder internal thing to overcome, and I'm actually surprised by how well we've done. Racism is decolonizing our minds, which I am not super like. It's all of them. I would say is not a thing that we can solve with a law. It's a thing that'll take generations to work through, and we just need to do our part to make things better. I kind of just took your question and then half answered it and then just went on a rant. So I'm sorry about that. Diana, will you ever do a video on the God of War series? I'll be honest, I haven't played the God of War series at all. I've heard it's like super sexist, but I haven't played it. I didn't buy any consoles between the PlayStation 2 and the Nintendo Switch. And so all of those console generations I wasn't around for. And I think that's like the generation that that's like the era when the God of War series came out. And so I never played it. I wouldn't even know how to play it today if I wanted to. I don't even think it came out for the Nintendo Switch. And I'm not going to drop $700 on like a PlayStation 3 or something in order to do it, unless it comes out for PC, but I don't know. It's not a game that particularly interests me, but I mean, it hits a lot of Greek mythology that I know a lot of people are interested in. Oh, I hope I did white men a solid, because most of the time white men don't answer that question super good, and I have no idea how I did. Please fill out a suggestion card to tell me how bad I was, because I probably was bad. Okay. I tried looking for your stream last week in the playlist, but I couldn't find it. Do you know where it is? All right, Doughboy DeVito, I have... that's probably me being bad. These live streams go unlisted after they're done, but then I put them in a playlist. I'm supposed to anyways, put them in a playlist of all of my streams so that I can remember to... So that I can, so that anybody who really wants to watch all these streams can do it. Although I don't understand, I guess, I don't know. I guess I've just been bad at adding them. So I will write down to remind myself to do that. So I'm going to take out my handy dandy index card and write that down. What was that thing I wanted to do? Yeah. Playlists for streams. The cat is attacking my pen. Yeah, I would probably, to follow up on the question about that professor. I mean, any feminist critique of anything is going to be breaking down the patriarchal gender relations that are built into the way the world works. And very, very often, like 9.99 times out of 10, that structurally benefits men over women in almost every case. And so if you do have a rigorous feminist critique of something, you are going to sound a lot like you're ragging on men because of how it looks. But that's not being mean. That's just being accurate. I mean, there's a lot of really great feminist literature out there about breaking down about how women reinforce patriarchal standards about the world internally by internalized misogyny and by sort of reinforcing these social structures in order to either play into them to use that as a way to get involved in the power structure, or as a way to or just because of like an internalized cultural growing up. And so I mean, like that stuff's deep. This is why like misogyny and like the patriarchy is a deeply rooted pathology in the human species, and it's going to take a lot of introspection. And I think that almost everybody, I would say that everybody at some point in their life has had patriarchal beliefs, and that patriarchy is a thing that you, like anybody, even the most woke person on earth, will be surprised to find that they still hold some of those beliefs. And it takes a lot of introspection, both on the larger scale, which I think is really good, that stuff that's happening, and on a personal scale to always just do better. There's no such thing as, it's not like about sexist and not sexist. It's about like trying to improve yourself every day and being aware of the impacts of the things that you do and say on others. Do you ever consider doing a video on the history of intergenerational trauma for a step back video? I actually talked about it quite a bit in my what was my dissertation. I had dropped out of my PhD, by the way, officially, so it was part of it. So I can look into it. It's interesting. I'm not sure where I would stand on it, but I would have to do a little bit more reading. Alrighty. I appreciate the ISO standard being used for your date format. Awesome. All right. Is a hot dog a sandwich? I actually have a friend who is a library and information science like PhD student, and he's almost done. And this question is actually very core to the way that he teaches information systems. So we've talked a lot about whether a hot dog is a sandwich, and the conclusion that he's come to is that it is not, because oh man, I'm surprised by how much how deep that root goes when you talk about whether a hot dog's a sandwich. Yeah, I don't have an answer for that. It's too hard. That's too hard of a question, and I think that library science people should definitely have a long discussion about that, because it talks a lot about the way that we categorize our information. All right, let me just add a few more. All right, history. If the Confederacy managed to exist until the 2010s, I believe it'd either be like apartheid South Africa during the 70s or 80s, or there would have been mass atrocities of black people. I honestly don't think that the Confederacy, even if it did win the Civil War, would have survived until the 2010s. Its resistance to modernization, its resistance to industrialization would have left, and also its persistence of belief in slavery to the point where it had been constitutionally mandated, would have resulted in a country that would very quickly, after the Civil War, because of the whole thing with cotton, the Confederacy after the Civil War would have been extremely poor, and in not too many years would have been a global pariah for still practicing slavery. And nobody would want to trade with them, and they wouldn't have anything of value. So they would either have to get rid of slavery, and they would have to industrialize very fast. And I think that those two things, with the recency of the Civil War, would result in reunification pretty soon. So, like, yeah. What do you think of the imperial system? I think it is old and outdated, and I don't know why Americans like it so much. But I know that, I don't know. It still confuses me. I don't understand the imperial system. I don't do it. I'm metric. I'm like the first generation of the metric people born in Canada, and I don't understand at all. How's the video on Gnosticism coming along? By the way, sorry for going full tanky in the chat. I've had a rough week. All right, well, you know. So Gnosticism is actually the video that I was talking about at the beginning of the stream. That's the video that I encoded the whole video. Yep, Phoebes is still here. Say hello. She didn't like that I interrupted her rest, but I want you guys to get a good view of her. So the video on Gnosticism is going to be next week's video, and it's done now. It's going out to patrons probably in the next couple hours. Rhodesia and apartheid. South Africa. So soon, Audible Anarchist. Soon. How much can the Confederacy be seen as some form of proto-fascism? It does show the reactionary and fascistic tendencies that come with nationalism, and it also shows the economic roots of. I think that honestly, it shows the changing face of liberalism in the 19th century. Alrighty, let's see where we got here. What is a techno-Marxist? So my Twitter profile says that I'm a progressive techno-Marxist, which I loved because I actually got it through a random ideology generator, which I thought was really funny. And then I was like, yeah, it fits because I'm progressive. You know, I am very strong in my beliefs that there's going to be that, you know, we need to make things better for everybody who lives here. And yeah, so Audible Anarchist kind of hit on it. So the techno-Marxist thing that I actually do believe to different extents is that on the longer term and on the macro scale, the means of production affect the superstructure of society, which that's like, you know, going into like impenetrable leftist jargon. But basically, I think that the way that society works and the values we hold and the cultures we have are sort of they're sort of like a emergent phenomenon of the way our economy works. And so like I think that a lot of people who say that we need to like impose political change onto the way the world works, like with Marxist's idea of revolution, are kind of putting the cart before the horse, and that those sort of things are always turbulent and kind of lead to periods of violence, and that the long term, the communism that Marx talked about, you know, the whole like labor, the labor needed for commodities approaching zero thing is going to be the driver of our society. And unfortunately, I think I have some issues with that theory, and there's definitely a lot to work out. And I think that I think that it's a worthy thing to talk about, but my conversations with like Mexi and stuff have kind of put some of those things into question, and I would like to discuss more of it. I think that it's an aspect of how societies develop and the kind of historical materialism works, but I think that it's a little bit more complicated. But I do think that a communist future, a stable communist future, is a post-scarcity economy. And so I do think that moving past work is part of moving past capitalism. Because like the breakdown of the haves and have-nots that have been around forever are based on the unequal division of labor. And I think that you need to kind of get rid of labor to get rid of the unequal distribution of labor. Because that's very, it's difficult. I mean, there's a lot of things to break down about that. Like Mexi's pointed out to me many times, and she's done a really great job at it, of talking about how even though, you know, we produce more things than we need, our society still creates a scarcity, and that there are capitalism has a way to keep things going even when they don't need to. And I like things like, you know, planned obsolescence and disposable things and you know, like problems with redistribution of things causing poverty. And so there's like the, you know, there's a thing to that, and I think that that needs to be explored more. And so I think that the way that I was approaching that is it's a bit too high level, like it's a bit too abstract, and it doesn't pay attention to things that are important that happen at the scale of like decades. And I was thinking at the scale of like centuries, I guess. Will you do a video on Canadian socialism? I'll look into it. I can't promise that I'm going to do it because I have a patron who really wants me to do a video on Canadian socialism, and so it's something that I've been pitched a lot. It's just that I'd have to find a way to get people to watch it, and I'm struggled with some of these subjects. But I think that if I told the story better, then I may be able to do it. Do you think some cis men refer to boats and fancy cars as she and her because they subconsciously see women as status symbols and a way to show off how masculine they are? I think there is something to that. I think that there's probably a whole field of feminist literary criticism that talks about that I probably am not aware of, but I think is probably super important that I would need to know before having a discussion about it. So I will just kind of end it there. Okay. Could you do a video about Trotskyism and globalist revolution? Oh my, you positists have been always after me to do that. I guess I should do a Trotsky video. He's an interesting dude. And I know that there's like these like weird people who love Posad, and they love like Trotsky, and they love nuclear war, and they get into UFOs and shit. I don't understand this group of people. I think that they might have gone a little bananas, but I know they exist. They call themselves posadists or posadists or something like that, and it's like, okay, whatevs, bud. But it'd be a good idea. Trotsky would be a good video topic. Have you read The Years of Rice and Salt? Is The Years of Rice and Salt? It's the alternate history novel about like a world where like Chongha like colonized America, and like China is like the world global superpower. Is that the one I'm thinking of? Or like where, no, it's like a book where like Europe got wiped out during the Black Death. Like the Black Death killed everybody, and then China became like the like global hegemonic power. I think that's The Years of Rice and Salt. I've never read it, but I've heard of it. I've been if you know Matt Mitrovich, the alternate historian, he has told me to he's told me that he wants to that he said I should read it, and so it's on my list. All right, man. You guys always have such good questions, and then we like right near the end. Um, all right. How do you believe we transition to a post-work society? It really is that's a good question. I really wish there was an answer because it's a thing that this is like what this is the techno-Marxist part of me where like how do we transition to a post-work society? Like it's going to happen. We are moving to a post-work society. It is happening. Technological development is already happening in that direction. Whether we like it or not, and whether or not we're prepared for that is the question. That would be interesting to find out. I think that there are some stopgap measures. I have good things and bad things to say about things like guaranteed minimum incomes as like ways to like wean ourselves off capitalism. But at the moment, I think that it's a thing that's going to have to develop. It's not a thing that's in our cultural reality yet, and so we can't really we can't conceive of a post-capitalist world because we live in capitalism so entrenched in it, and so we'd have to see more. We'd have to see more automation and things get even worse to see to even imagine these things. Like people are already picturing socialism. Who knows where we go after that? And they're good questions. I don't have answers, and I think that's why people find me infuriating sometimes. If you end up making a video on techno-Marxism or Rhodesia in South Africa, can you give me a shout out in these vids for suggesting it on stream? Super okay if you don't. Doughboy DeVito, I'm going to write a note on those two ones. So is Trotsky and Rhodesia or techno-Marxism. Techno-Marxism is just a word I made. I just smash some words together. I don't think it actually exists, but I'll put you on for the Rhodesia and South Africa one. I feel like okay, you know what? I could make my case as a techno-Marxist and do a kind of analysis of history. I feel like that would be a better written thing than an actual thing, and I think that someone way smarter than me needs to write that. All right. Joshua Hiller, how do we deal with labor breaking down but not broken down? If you have an answer, I think that there is a Nobel Prize in economics for you. Honestly, if you can write how do we transition out of a capitalist society in the face of automation, you would be a hero. Oh, hey, girl, you don't know this. Thank you for the super chat. How would you do a video about breaking down the American ideal of picking yourself up from your bootstraps came from historically? That that would be, yeah, that's actually a really good one. I talk about that a little bit in my Wild West video, but I could definitely elaborate on that quite a bit. So self up by bootstraps. And then the girl, and I will know that that is you. I do think that the automation question, I think, is an interesting. The automation question in political theory is almost like the suicide question in existential philosophy. Think about that one for a bit, and it's a fun discussion to have. All right. Okay. How much do you think democratic socialism has the next decades, with the unrivaled levels of unemployment and poverty that'll likely come with automation? I do think that I did a talk about this actually around this time last year, and I said that, oh no, good luck on your medical procedure, Doughboy. I hope everything turns out okay for you. Yeah, so I did a talk last year about automation and the crisis that it poses for capitalist modes of production. And you're from Iceland, you love my video. Oh, thank you so much, Katrin Pala. I appreciate that. Thank you. Welcome to the orc clan. I think that we're supposed to be right. The step back orc gang. We're like a gang of orcs. I forgot about that. All right, I got to go through these fast because we're running out of time, and I want to get to as many of these questions as possible. Democratic socialism, I think, is the most palatable alternative to capitalism that exists in our current moment. And in the face of a reactionary fascist uprising, I think it is the best thing that we have to advocate for like for an election that would happen tomorrow. And so I think that is the next step. That is the next step forward. And unfortunately, we have a lot of nuclear weapons and a lot of reactionaries, and I think that is the central political fight of the next like decade or so. Thoughts on the new ContraPoint video? So yeah, for you guys who don't know, ContraPoint made a video about Jordan Peterson, and it is fucking awesome. Jordan Peterson was somebody that left-wing people were having issues trying to write around because he's so ambiguous. But luckily, ContraPoints, she being one of the most willing people to like wade through a mile of shit and come out with an amazing response video, she did a really great job. And she made this video that is this like half-hour rebuke of Jordan Peterson. And I think that she was fair, and I think she did a really good job. And I think that she's going to make all of his reactionary fans very, very uncomfortable with how much she just blatantly comes onto him. I think it was a great video. I think that she's getting really good as a filmmaker and as a writer and as an artist. I am blessed. I am actually blessed to know her. Could you do a video on modern day communist parties? That doesn't sound very history. I'd have to think about how you would make that happen, but socialism today, I think that's a different YouTube channel. There's a school of Hindu thought that wants to break the wheel of suffering with nukes. That's terrifying. Do you support global revolution? No. I think that revolution is a process, not an event, if that makes sense. It's a long-term change. I don't think that a short-term revolution has long-term prospects. I think that changing the world to make it better in a permanent fashion will be something that happens slowly over a long period of time that you need to build things with, not tear things down with. And I think that the best thing you can do to make the communist revolution happen is try to find some way to remove capitalism from your life and your community in some small fashion. The capitalism and the state are not going to be overthrown. They're going to become irrelevant. And I think that's the way that we should be thinking. But I know I'm very alone in that. All right. Annoyed me that the people in Wakanda were Bantu because the first people in that part of Africa were actually Khoisan. So that's Xhosa. Never mind. Is that a dumb thing to care about? No. It does show that there was a lot of glossing over. Can you come to Iceland? I would love to go to Iceland. I super want to go to Iceland. Iceland is like one of my top countries that I want to visit. And I probably will someday. I don't know when, but I really want to go. Do you think that capitalism will try to stave off unemployment by increasing bureaucratization similar to the Soviet 100% employment schemes? Actually, yes. I think that Bernie Sanders literally proposed a bill like that very recently. Good drugs or boring drugs? Well, okay, Bernie Sanders proposed that recently, and actually it's about building infrastructure to give everybody work, and actually that's not a bad idea because the U.S. desperately needs to modernize its infrastructure. So I actually think it's a good idea. It's still like kind of the bureaucratization type thing, but I don't see that as a bad thing at this moment, given that people need jobs so that they can have food and pay rent, and I don't see a problem with that. Good drugs or boring drugs? I don't know what you mean. Katrin Paula, you've been a fan for 2 years. I appreciate. Thank you so much. How did I not meet you before today? It's really nice to meet somebody who's been around for 2 years. And if I come to Reykjavik, I'll make sure to let the public know, and I will see you. Hopefully. All right. Oh man, we're getting super close to the end. All right, so it's part of the DemSoc gang. Also, yeah, it's likely to be the only option that doesn't end in a power struggle that is able to get socialisms on our side. Yeah, we need friends. Leftists need allies, not enemies. And unfortunately, we're really good at making enemies and really bad at making friends, and we need to work on that. All right, One last question. I know we're over time, but I want to do it. And that is, American sci-fi fans like Star Trek's Federation of Planets. If it's a Marxist society, most U.S. Americans hate Marxism. Yeah, it's because a lot of Star Trek fans don't. Lots of Star Trek fans don't realize that it's Marxism. That's what makes Star Trek so beautiful. Is that it's like the silent Marxism. It's seeping it in. It's the dog whistles. It's great. All right, here is a link to the new video. I hope you guys enjoy it. It's about dwarves. It's the last video in like my old style. I hope you like it. Be sure to check it out, watch it, like, share, subscribe, and I will see you guys next week.